Hey everybody, TechBoxer here. I just want to say before this video starts that I'm really glad that I'm going to be able to do review videos. I've been wanting to make review videos for a little while now, especially with some of the games that I've beaten and some that I have completed. And I just kind of want to make these videos because I know of review videos out there that are really short, or some that are like 5 minutes long whenever there's a lot of content in a game. And I feel like it doesn't really do the game justice. So I just wanted to make these videos so that way they have a little bit, it'll help people out there that want to get into these games nowadays to kind of see how to prepare, I guess, like to prepare what they're getting into and to see how good of a game it is, or like if it's worth their time, because I know a lot of people out there want to get into some old games but they don't want to waste their time with stuff that's not, I guess, good, or if it's shovelware, or if it's kind of mediocre. But anyways, other than that, let's go ahead and get into it. This is Gun for the GameCube, and it was made by Activision and Eversoft, which are the people that made the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series. And what's funny is this game actually predates the very first iteration of Red Dead Revolver, or Red Dead Redemption, which is what I just said, Red Dead Revolver. So this is technically the very first Red Dead Redemption-esque style game, because it is an RPG in a sense, where you upgrade stats and stuff. But for its setting, it's pretty good, and I think they did a really good job with the setting and with all the scenery and the locations. I feel like it's pretty good actually artistically. Like, there's even a certain part in this map where it gets really dark and it has like a haze or something. So they kind of do a little bit of stuff that's out of the ordinary, but it's pretty decently sized as well. Like, the map itself is pretty big, and I mean, it's not really big. Like, going across from one side of the main map to the other will probably take you, depending on your horse's speed also, it will probably take you about 5 minutes, maybe 3. It's not a really huge game, but it does have a good scale to where it's not like, oh, it's too small and cramped, you can't go anywhere kind of deal. And as far as story goes, I played the game about 6 months ago, so I've forgotten a good deal of it, but you're essentially playing as Colton White, and you're taking on an revenge mission against against the guy that killed your father in the game, because when you take a ferry ride at the very first cutscene of the game, your father gets offed by one of the main bad dude's lackeys, because they were there at the same exact time for coincidental purposes, and he just offs your father figure right there, and your Colton just gets kind of pissed about it, and he's like, okay, well, my dad's dead, I'm gonna go avenge him and kill these bad dudes before they get souped up. And that's essentially what the game is you're basically, like, as far as all the story missions, you're basically finding people to figure out where all these bad dudes are in this one town. And once you take them out, you try to figure out where the next bad lackey is, and then you try to figure out where the next bad lackey is, and then you find out where the big bad dude is trying to head out to, and you take him out. And that's essentially the entire story of the game. It's basically just a search and destroy mission. You're searching for this person, and then you trying to destroy them. And this boss is kind of unfair, actually. He's a pretty hard boss. But, like, the story isn't really what I think is the huge part of this game. So going out of that, I want to talk about the shops. Later on in the game, when you start getting more money from their missions and you find gold and stuff, you can go to these shopkeepers and the Indian trader that's in one part of the map and exchange the money that you've made to get these upgrades for your guns and for your storage, or to increase your bullet time and to make some of your melee weapons just more powerful. They're pretty alright. Like, I feel like the shops don't break the game. Like, you can't get some of the good stuff before certain missions. Like, certain missions come, like, there's definitely a difficulty scale, and there's also, like, a certain amount of money that you just can't get that doesn't allow you to break the game to where you could get all the really good stuff early on in the game, because, I mean, the only way that can happen is if you do a lot of side quests, and even then, a lot of side quests are kind of blocked until you do certain story missions. And there is gold around the map, but you can only collect like 45, which is $10 per gold, so you can only get like $450 total from gold. And some of that gold is even in a different part of the map that you can't access until you get there in the story mode. Speaking of side quests, I'll go ahead and talk about one of the side things you can do in a game, which is poker. And the poker in this game is basically Texas Hold'em, and you can play it around 4 to 5 times, I think, in the main story, but once you complete these missions, you cannot play poker again unless you start a new save and play it all over again. But there's 2 locations that you can do poker in, which is Dodge City and Empire. And they provide a good little distraction from the main game, but they're not really necessary. It's just kind of easier to get money and just a nice little distraction to do whenever you have nothing else to do in the game. But, you know, the money could be useful early on because you can unlock some enhancements for your guns and stuff. With that out of the way, we'll talk about the guns that you can get. So there's 4 categories. There's bows, rifles, snipe, and shotguns. And then you do have your revolvers, but that's kind of its own thing. We're going to talk about the 4 classes of weapons. So with shotguns, they usually deal, you know, heavy damage in a wide area, and they can usually wipe out multiple enemies. The snipe is a long-range shooting gun, and depending on what enhancements you get with it, you can determine its accuracy, and it'll usually do instant headshots. But then there's also rifles, which do pack a punch, but they're also kind of, they're not really that quick. They usually take out one person. They don't take out multiple people like a shotgun, but they're more mid-range kind of. And then you got the bows, which in my opinion are kind of the most useless weapon in the game, because really all you use them for is to do your hunting missions. In my opinion, the hunts really aren't necessary, because all you do is you just hunt the animal that you're tasked with hunting in the certain area that you can find it. You get its fur, and then you get the money. Now, depending on how you kill it, also determines how much money you get. And sometimes they throw in stat increases with these, but it's usually just money that you would do this for. But you also need to do all the side missions in the game to get the special weapons that are at the very end, because it's the completionist bonus, which kind of affects what you do afterwards as well, though. Essentially, though, the bow is kind of one tool for one specific thing only, and that's about it. Then your revolvers. The revolvers are actually the best weapon in the game because they have a unique mechanic with them alone, and it's a bullet time. So basically, you can press the B button or whatever button it is on the other controllers and PC, but it'll allow you to do like slow-mo, and you can auto-lock onto opponents that are nearby in your range with the revolvers. And you can do combo attacks, or combo kills, basically. Just shoot everybody real quickly, and the more combos you get, the higher your bar fills up to allow you to do bullet time for longer. And there are some good revolvers. Like, you start out the game with 1, but like you see me, you can use 2 at the very end whenever you beat Hoodoo. And there are some decent weapons in this game that I have had a lot of fun with. And there's also side things too. Like, you can operate a cannon in one point in the story, which is really fun. But as far as all the weapons go, that's pretty much it. And, you know, this bonus weapon that you could get is the knock gun, which you get after defeating the main boss. But if you do all the completionist stuff, you get the special one, which allows you to blow up everything. It's like a cannonball that blows up. And that's what you've been seeing me use in the video for the majority of the time. But the guns in this game, sometimes they're weird. The guns don't really hit on its target all the time, and the explosions don't really hit either sometimes. Like, the cannonball gun that explodes, you can shoot right next to an enemy and they won't feel anything. They won't take damage or nothing. It just doesn't do anything to them. And that kind of goes into the other weapons that's in the game too, like the explosions, like the dynamite and the Molotovs. You could throw all those. The dynamite might not hit him. It might not. It's an explosion, so you don't know. And then Molotovs, they kind of are an area of an effect thing, so it really only works if people are, like, if you're in a small area and there's a lot of people that are cramped up nearby. But those are all the weapons, basically. And we'll move on to the stats now. Every side mission you do basically increases your stats, and there's 4 different stats. There's health, horse, accuracy, and reload speed. The most important ones obviously are health and anything to do with your gunplay, but you're only going to upgrade your health after certain story missions, and then your gun accuracy and your gun reload speed will only increase with certain side quests, like side missions. Like, there's wanted posters that you can do to, like, take bandits and to, like, bring them in, and they'll give you, like, I don't know, plus 15, plus 20 on your gun accuracy, and, like, plus 5 on your gun reload speed, depending on what you do. And and it kind of matters with how you do the missions. Like, if you kill the bandits and they're asking you to bring them in alive, it'll affect like how much money you get, and I think it affects your stats as well. And then there's also the Pony Express and the ranch missions, which are mainly just your horse. And the horse stat to me was kind of useless. I mean, later on it became more useful when I was trying to complete the game, but all the horse stat really does is increase the speed your horse goes, and it'll help allow the horse to be handled better, so that way it doesn't like slide, and that way you can make sharper turns and stuff. But stats in the game wise, those are pretty much it, and that's really what makes the RPG system in this game, because you're leveling up your accuracy, reload speed, your health, and the horse depending on how you do it. And when you do all those, you generally will get all your stats whenever you complete all those side missions, although I'm not sure what happens if you do your wanted missions incorrectly. I don't know if you could actually lose out on stat bonuses. But those stat bonuses are really important, especially in the end game, because in the end game, you're going up against the main villain at this point, and he's decked out in like an entire suit of armor. You can't shoot him because even though his head is exposed, you can't do damage with regular bullets. Instead, you'd rather have to throw Molotovs or explosives or fire arrows into these little gas geysers, which shoot up gas. And when you light it on fire, it'll shoot like a flame, or it'll geyser up flame in that area, and it could do damage to him whenever that happens. But whenever you do that and his health depletes to by about 50, that's whenever the game goes into phase 2, and you have to either wait around or shoot the guy, and you gotta wait till he throws TNT out. And when he throws it, then you go into bullet time, and you basically shoot it out of his hand right as he's throwing it. You do that 3 times, and the main villain is dead at that point. Now, with all of that, after you've beaten him, you get his gun, which is like a cannonball shooting shotgun, and then you also, depending on what you've done, if you've completed all the horse, like Pony Express and the ranch missions, you get the armored horse that was used by one of the lackeys in the early game, and that horse can basically just take hits like it's nothing, and it's a horse that'll stick with you for a long time, and it's a really good horse. But if you complete all the other missions and you've done every other mission in the game, basically completing everything, even all poker stuff, then you will unlock the special knock gun, which is the cannonball explosive shotgun that I've been using. And honestly, it's here that the game kind of presents the dilemma that it holds with it being an old game. It doesn't really have any like in-game content. After you've completed all the stuff in the game, all you can really do now is to just go into town and cause fights and fight all the bandit posses, and then going around the world you can fight like all the animals, or you can fight the bandits that show up out of nowhere. Other than that, there's not really anything you can do in-game wise, except there is this one thing that people have found out, and you have to know about this in order to do it, but you can essentially go back to the very first cutscene that you weren't able to like do anything in, where you were shooting that bird in the lake. And if you go over there and you press, depending on which controller you're using too, because it all depends on the console that you're using, but if I'm playing on GameCube, so all I had to do was press down the L trigger and right trigger and the A button. If you hold these buttons down while you're standing in between 2 rocks on the lake, after clipping through a lot of walls and areas, which you can do, it's not really clipping through, you're just climbing the hills basically with the horse, but it takes very precise movements and placement. You can make it to that area, and once you did all the button combinations, like I said, you'll hear a noise, and when you hear that noise and you let it do its thing, you can press the start button, go into the options menu, and there'll be a new option called gun. That'll essentially let you do all the cutscenes that you've ever seen. It'll let you play all the missions that were in the game, and you can basically do New Game Plus. But it's locked out to this code, and unless you know about it, you won't probably ever do it, so you'll be locked out of the game, and you'll just have to start the game over again if you want to do the whole story again. Wow, we sure got a lot of review stuff on this video before we got to the score, huh? Well, anyways, before I do go to my review score for this game, I do want to talk a few things about this game before I review it, and that should also help explain why I scored the game the way I did. But one of the points that I want to bring up is this game has a really odd standpoint on completion and in-game philosophy. So when you beat the game and you beat the main bad guy, and you do all this stuff in the game rewards you with this by giving you a lot of really cool items, like the basically unkillable horse and like the most OP gun in the game. But you really don't use it. Like those, you can't really use those unless you're just gonna go around the world and keep on beating up random people, or you're just getting a New Game Plus, which kind of irks me a little bit because I've already beaten the game. Why would I want to start all over with all this new stuff? It's just going to make it easier. What's the point kind of deal. And the game kind of doesn't really give you a whole lot after that. And I know this is an old game, so it really doesn't have a whole lot of content in general. And I should, understand that and take into appreciation of what it's done. But as far as I can tell, the game really sets up a lot of things. And it is kind of sandboxy, but it's only sandboxy to a very considerable limit. And another point I also want to bring out is that I want to look at this game as what it is back then and as what it is now. As far as the game for what it is back then, it was probably a really cool game. It was probably one of the bigger open world games that were made during that time, or one of the few, or maybe one of the many. There's a lot of games I don't know that were open world-ish, but we did have Grand Theft Auto before. But this game, it kind of, you can tell it's old, but it doesn't have its, bad graphics. I feel like the graphics are good. I feel like the story is alright. I think the cutscenes are good even. And the game has a really funny physics mechanic. I've never laughed so hard at a game because of just seeing all the corpse launches that this game allows you to do. There's a lot of good in this game, but I feel like it all kind of gets, counteracted, or it's kind of countered by some of its negatives, which is, it's a very empty game, throughout the majority of the areas, in the open fields especially, in the towns you can see people walking around, but if you're not in a town and if you're, out in the open, even the animals, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of animals out in the open, and there just feels like there's a lot more open space and not really a whole lot in these areas. But with all that aside, I'm going to go ahead and give this a review score of 7 out of 10, the C score. Now, I say this because it's not really, it didn't excel in a whole lot of things, but it also wasn't a bad game, and it also didn't, make shovelware, I guess, type of gameplay. It's a good game. I just feel like it's kind of average because I hate how it kind of allows, or it kind of tells people to go and do the completionist route, but whenever you do the completionist route, you don't really get to use your rewards in a meaningful way, I feel like. And the game, I feel like, is really, I experienced crashes with the game, and it kind of made it tedious. I feel like if you play the game more than once, you're going to feel kind of bored, and it's just going to get tedious. So I don't think it has a replayability factor, unlike the PSP version with the multiplayer feature. And it really kind of sucks that the multiplayer wasn't an aspect for these console releases, because I feel like the multiplayer would have helped this game stay relevant. And I feel like it could have been a lot better if the console versions, or even PC version for that matter, had multiplayer. But with all that aside, I think it's respectable to give this game a 7 out of 10 average score, because it's not bad. It's not entirely great, but it's a good average game. And I would say if you're wanting to play this game in 2022, yeah, look into it. If you wanted to get into retro stuff and you wanted to see an open world game from its a 2005 perspective, go for it. It's not a bad game. I think you'll have fun with it. But if you're looking to find a game that will give you its worth of time, I would say just buy this game on Steam whenever it's on discount. Play whenever you want, and then if you don't feel like you want it, just delist it from your library. Anyways, with all that said, I hope y'all like and subscribe this video. Thanks for everything. We're at 40 subscribers. I can't wait to get to 50 one day. I appreciate all y'all sticking around. I like that I'm able to do more things now than I did before, because before my videos were just, gameplay videos with a crappy mic. So now I'm glad I'm kind of expanding. And I'll see y'all later. Peace.